G'day guys, Will here, welcome back to the channel. So today's video we're going to be taking a quick look and unboxing the Alienware M15 Revision 2 gaming laptop. So this is the absolute top spec, top of the line Alienware M15 model that you can buy. There is the Area 51 which sits above this and uses a desktop processor and graphics card. But this is the bee's knees when it comes to portable gaming laptops as of Q4 in 2019. So what we're going to be doing throughout this video series is exploring the strengths and weaknesses of gaming laptops as the technology stands as of right now. So this is a machine that I've purchased for my own personal use. I needed a laptop for being able to edit video and do things like that out on the road. I'm having to travel a lot more now for work since going to full time with Boosted Media, and being tied down to editing on a desktop, in the studio here is a bit of a limiting factor. I need to be able to get out on the road and do more work while I'm out there as well. And I wanted something that I was going to be able to do some gaming as well when I'm away, be able to record some videos hopefully for you guys as well. So I thought it'd be a really great opportunity to really dive in and take a look at how things are today. So this isn't my first gaming laptop. I actually had an Alienware M18X right back in, I think it was early 2012 when they first came out. That was I can't remember what the processor was in it now, but it was 16 gig of RAM. It was a dual 580M graphics card system. And I held on to that for a couple of weeks and ended up actually sending it back simply because I wasn't happy with the performance, the amount of heat that it generated, and just its general clunkiness. I found that, for something that size, I was better off just having a desktop anyway and just having a small portable laptop that I could take for, office duties and things like that. But technology has come a very long way since then. And as you'll see, this laptop is incredibly thin and light when you consider the hardware that is inside. So this video, we're going to be unboxing it, taking a quick look over the hardware specs, firing it up, having a look at the screen quality and stuff like that. And then I'm going to go away and use it for a couple of weeks before coming back and doing a full review on the laptop, letting you know what I've found in terms of strengths and weaknesses over the time that I've been using it. And then we'll dive into some more, targeted things like benchmarking, having a look at how it performs in games, having a look at things like the Tobii eye tracker, and then just really deep diving into the ins and outs of whether I think a gaming laptop is a worthwhile purchase as the technology stands as of right now. So without further ado, let's jump in and get this guy unboxed. Okay, so let's get this thing opened up. Now, the first thing I just want to say here is that I'm really impressed with the size of the packaging here. They haven't gone completely over the top with some massive box, and I think that in today's day and age, it really is important to try and minimize the amount of packaging as much as possible. So props to them for doing that. But let's open it up here, and straight away we're presented with the beautiful machine. We'll grab it out and set it aside for now and just have a quick look at the other things that we have in the box. So lift that up. Don't worry, we will have a good look at it in just a moment. We've got a little Alienware information card there that tells us a little bit about the history of Alienware. We've got a package here that includes a quick start guide, safety information, and so forth. Up the back here, we have our 240 watt power brick. And that is actually really well designed, very nice and thin there. We'll measure that in just a moment as well, but definitely a lot smaller than I thought it might be. So that is quite impressive. Came with an Australian plug adapter as well, which is a good thing. Sometimes you're not so lucky with those sorts of things. And that is literally everything that we have inside the box. So yeah, really impressed with the lack of overall use of plastic and excessive packaging and things like that. They've done a really good job there. So let's set the box aside and have a look at the laptop itself. So this is the first hands-on time I've actually had with one of these at all. I didn't get an opportunity to try one before I bought one or anything like that, but yeah, absolutely beautiful design. And I know that it's a bit of a polarizer in terms of the kind of flashiness of it, but they've definitely eased off a little bit on the extremeness of previous Alienware designs. Previously they had the big vents on the front and everything. If you have a look at the back here, it does still have a LED ring around the outside, and we'll have a look at that in a little bit more detail a bit later on. But in terms of ins and outs, we've got our HDMI port here, we've got a display port, a USB-C, we've got a proprietary connection here as well for Alienware's external graphics solution. We've got our DC input here, moving around to the side. We've got a full-size Ethernet port there, so no need for a dongle, wink wink Apple. We've got a USB 3 port, we've got our headphone input output as well as optical as well. And then flipping it around the other side, we have two additional USB ports as well. So plenty of input and output. So we weigh in at 2.16 kilograms, a height of 20.5 millimeters at the thickest point, which is just here, and 17.9 millimeters at the front. So it is slightly tapering away at the front. Thickest point is at the hinge here. So we've got a depth of 276 millimeters, so just under 30 centimeters there, and 360.5 millimeters wide. One thing that does strike me is it's actually very reminiscent of the old Sony Z series laptop that I had back around about 2013 as well, with the sort of angular edge here in the sides. A very similar design as well. Not saying they stole the idea, but yeah, it was a design that I liked back then, and I certainly like it again now. But anyway, let's open this up. Now you do need to put your fingers on the front to secure it. Now you also want to be careful you don't get your thumb right on your webcam there as well. And really, really nice design inside here. So we've got a 8mm bezel thickness on either side, 10mm at the top to the edge there, add another 5mm for the lip if you want to include that as well, and 15mm of bezel thickness down the bottom as well. So not the thinnest bezel on the market, but it's certainly not too much, and I think it fits in well with the overall design of the laptop. So we've got our Alienware logo at the bottom here, and we'll peel off all the plastic in just a moment. So we've got this hexagon pattern cut out here. Now that looks like the ideal place to have speakers, but this is actually an additional cooling slot as well. You've got the vents coming in from the rear, coming out the sides, and then also some ventilation in the top. So the speakers actually sit in the panel underneath and sort of project across the table. They're not the greatest speakers in the world, but we'll comment on that in a future video as well once we've had a chance to test things out a bit more. But you'll also notice here we've got our Tobii eye tracker bar. Now this is something that I'm really looking forward to testing out. Basically this allows really cool functionality such as having the screen dim when it doesn't sense that there's somebody looking at it, as well as being able to interact with what's happening on the machine by just moving your eyes and things like that as well, moving the view around inside games, and all sorts of wacky features. So definitely keen to check that out, but let's peel some of the plastics off here now. You only get to do this once, and it's so strangely satisfying. I'm sure anybody who's watching loves a good peel. Now, another thing that is often sacrificed on these thinner form factor laptops is the quality of the keyboard. And I'm happy to say that this keyboard has a really nice tactile feel to it. There's not too much rattle in the buttons. There's a good few millimeters of travel as you push down on the keys as well, which feels really nice. And again, I'll comment on this in further detail once I've had a chance to really use the laptop for a couple of weeks. But yeah, straight off the bat, it feels really nice to type on. And we've got a beautiful glass trackpad as well. We'll see how the software integration is for that in just a moment. So it definitely feels like a nice premium piece of equipment as opposed to a lot of the other gaming laptops that are available on the market. The previous machine I had to this was a Venom Blackbook, which is basically a rebranded Clevo machine, and this is absolutely light years ahead of that in terms of the quality and the finish of the product. So really impressed so far. But anyway, I think it's time to get this thing fired up. So the first thing that I have to mention is the screen on this thing is absolutely incredible. I went with the 4K OLED version, the 60 Hz panel, and this thing, the contrast ratio, everything is just absolutely out of this world. It's on par with the display on the iPhone 11 Pro Max that I recently purchased. And yeah, absolutely incredible. Just looks so sharp. I'm not going to harp on about it too much in the video because obviously you can't see what it looks like in the video, but I can tell you this thing is just absolutely mint. We'll have to do some testing later on. We might even look at some calibration charts and things like that, but absolutely beautiful display. Now, we talked about the touchpad a moment ago and the tactile feel of it with the glass panel, but we also need to talk about the software side as well. So we'll touch on that quickly now, no pun intended. So you have to sort of adjust how you do things a little bit here. You have to kind of get your mind wrapped around exactly how it works. We've got all the normal gesture controls that you have in Windows 10 now on any machine, but it's a little bit funny. If you try to sort of tap and drag with two fingers to scroll, it feels really clunky, and you can see how it's kind of jerking around there on the page. What we want to do is we kind of want to just slide it as if we're sliding or rolling a wheel or something like that. And when we do it like that, it actually scrolls really smoothly. So not quite as good as what you get on a Mac, but very, very nice. And we have our gesture controls as well. So say, for example, we touch with 3 fingers and scroll to the side. That brings up our switcher between different windows. You can switch to a different window here, scroll up and down, nice and smooth. We can gesture up to our desktop, our news panel, all sorts of things like that. But it's all pretty much the standard Windows 10 features that you get today. But the glass touch of the touchpad is really nice. So yeah, I feel like these are things that historically have kind of made people gravitate towards Mac. And I feel like the gap is slowly closing down now to the point where Windows feels almost as good. I wouldn't say it's quite there just yet, but we are definitely getting a lot closer. So let's have a look at some of the other software integration now as well. Okay, so as with any branded device these days, it does come with a load of what we'll call bloatware pre-installed, and we're not going to go through every single one of these titles now, but you do have this program called Alienware Command Center, and this is where you control all the things like your RGB lighting, your overclocking, and everything like that. So we'll have a quick look through this. You can see here we've got profiles that are defined by our various different games that we have installed, so you can set up different overclocking profiles, thermal profiles, and so forth for any of your games, and then individually control your settings based on the game that you're playing. You can also control things like your global overclocking settings, your thermal settings as well for things like fans, as well as your power and performance settings. We've got our library setting here as well, where we can adjust more settings around games. But this is where we get into the more important stuff. So we click on effects. Here is where you configure all of your lighting effects for the various different RGB bits and pieces that are on the machine. So here we've got our lighting for all the zones, the alien head, as well as the Tron light on the back. So if we click on alien head here, that is the logo that appears on the back of the machine, and then Tron light is the light on the vent. So we can click those on and off. We can change colors as well. So say we want to go to a blue, click on that, and it will change across. Now we also have a bunch of different effects that we can use here as well, such as morph, pulse, a single color, breathing, spectrum, rainbow wave, and a static default blue, which is what the system ships with by default. So we'll set it back to blue for now. And then if we click on this little button here, move across to keyboard, we can do exactly the same thing for our keys. Now these are actually segmented into different sections along the board. You would have seen when the system booted up, we kind of saw it scroll across with rainbow effect. So you can actually set different colors for different keys here. So say for example, you wanted to change all keys, you just click on that. And then again, same deal as before, you can have spectrum, rainbow wave, static color, a scanner like Knight Rider, or a breathing effect, which is like a pulsing effect that goes in and out. And then we click across to the Fusion tab, which is where we can do our overclocking. So by default, you've got an overclock 1, overclock 2 profile preloaded. I've also set up an undervolt profile as well. And we'll talk about that in more detail once we get into our overclocking videos later on. But some pretty basic stuff here. You can see temperature, voltage, and usage. Click on advanced view here. You can set your turbo frequency maximum, your voltage as well as your voltage offset, and same deal for the graphics card as well. So we can adjust our thermal limit, power limit, core clock, and memory clocks here from the same system. Then we also have a readout for memory as well, but on this particular system, the memory overclocking functionality is not enabled. So we click on down to temperature here. We can see the temperature of our thermal probe near our CPU fan, as well as our system fan, and then our fan speeds as well. So it's actually interesting, these are reading around 40% at the moment because the system is relatively quiet, but obviously as it ramps up, it gets a lot louder. Now we can set up profiles here as well. You can see it sort of gives us an order of importance here in terms of what it's going to prioritize. We can also have a look at the history here, as well as make some adjustments to things like offset and hysteresis and things like that. So pretty all-encompassing there, but nothing really groundbreaking, but it's nice to have everything sort of in the one little tool. So we click down to power profiles as well, and you can see basically this is just a representation of what you can already adjust through Windows 10, but again, nice to have it all in the same place. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, I did have a lot of problems getting this software running to begin with, a good 2 or 3 hours of stuffing around. Okay, so I thought we would run a quick time spy benchmark here, just to give you a rough ballpark figure on what you can expect performance-wise out of this machine. So we're running Time Spy in 3D Mark here. Now this is out-of-the-box settings, no overclocking, no undervolting, and anything like that. Now obviously thermal throttling is likely still going to be an issue on this machine, as it is with most gaming laptops these days, and we'll definitely look into that in more detail once we get more into the overclocking stuff. But I can tell you already, it's feeling very, very, very hot along the top here. It doesn't feel too bad sitting on your lap, it doesn't burn your legs or anything like that, but definitely something to be aware of. It does get very, very hot, and the fans haven't quite ramped up to 100% just yet, but I'm sure that will happen pretty soon. But yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the hardware, a couple of little things that are considerations if you're looking at a machine like this. So this is the top spec model. This is the 9980HK processor, as well as the 2080 Max-Q graphics card. Now, the nomenclature on NVIDIA graphics cards can be a little bit, I wouldn't say misleading, but it's a little bit misleading. So the 2080 Max-Q is, the TPD on that card is a lot lower than the desktop equivalent. So the performance out of the 2080 Max-Q is about on par with what you get out of a 1060 desktop graphics card. So I'm expecting the score that we'll see on this will probably be around the sort of 7,000 to 9,000 mark. So compare that to my actual gaming desktop machine. That's a 2080 Ti with a 9900K, both overclocked pretty heavily. And there's a link above my head now if you want to check out that build. But that system scores about 15,300 points, I think it was. So I'm expecting this will be probably around a little bit over half the performance that we saw from the desktop. And that's simply just down to the amount of power that's available, thermal throttling and stuff like that. But we will definitely try it out a little bit later on in this video series and see just how much performance we can squeeze out of this without cooking anything. But we'll let it run through and see what kind of score we actually do get. We're getting about 45 frames per second here. I'm not sure if that's running 4K or 1080 though. I'm guessing it's probably 1080. But there's a couple of other little considerations with the hardware here as well. Obviously being so thin, they do have to make a couple of little compromises. Well, maybe not necessarily little compromises with the construction of the system. Now, the biggest one of those is the RAM. The RAM is actually soldered onto the motherboard on this system. So if you want to upgrade your RAM later on, you are definitely out of luck there. Now, there are two options available. This is the 16 gig version, but the 8 gig version only uses a single channel. So there isn't an option for 32 gig. Now, ideally, I would have gone with a 32 gig option if it was there. I spoke to a couple of guys at Dell and they said that they, basically in their opinion, they just didn't see the need for 32 gig on a system like this. They don't think that it's really necessary. I guess that's a debatable thing. Mostly for gaming and stuff like that, you probably don't need more than 16 gig. But if you want to be future-proof, you want to do things like video editing, it definitely does come in handy. So it'll be interesting to see how I get on with the 16 gig or whether I actually do wish that I had 32. The other thing as well, just on the subject of heat and stuff like that, is that the motherboard is inverted in this machine. That means that if you want to repaste your CPU or your CPU cooler or anything like that, and I did a video on this about 1.5 years ago showing how to limit thermal throttling on machines like this, you have to disassemble pretty much the whole machine. You have to take the whole motherboard out of the system, flip it over, and then remove the cooler. You can't just pop the lid off, take the cover off, take the heatsink off, and then repaste it. So it is a pretty taxing job that you definitely want to consider before you embark on. So those are the couple of little considerations there, but I think all in all, I'm really happy with the design, I'm really happy with the construction, and I think that obviously being a system that is this thin and light, there's always going to be some sacrifices that have to be made. Now, in terms of the storage, I do have a 1 terabyte M2 drive installed. There is a second slot there as well. So you do have some expansion compatibility for your M2 storage. But yeah, the RAM really would have been nice. I would even say it would have been better to only have one M2 slot and maybe have a DIMM slot beside it instead of the 2 storage slots. But I'm sure they have their reasons, but just something to be aware of. So anyway, getting towards the end of our testing now. So let's see what we scored. Loading result, and okay, 7,500. So pretty much exactly what I expected we would most likely get. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's not desktop performance, but pretty respectable nonetheless for such a portable system. It'll definitely be interesting to see just how far we can increase that with a little bit of overclocking, undervolting, and thermal management. We'll definitely be exploring that in more detail and having a look at just how much thermal throttling was going on and things like that, but a little bit beyond the scope of this particular video. Okay, so that is my initial impressions and overview of the Alienware M15 Revision 2. And yeah, look, so far really impressed with it. Obviously, I'm a little bit annoyed by the amount of stuffing around that I had to do to get that control center software working, and that I think tarnished my initial experience a little bit because, you know, things like that are just annoying. I had a limited amount of time to get this video done, and I ended up spending 3 or 4 hours stuffing around with that software. But you know, these are the things that happen. I think that's one of the big reasons why a lot of people end up buying Apple machines, because you just don't have to deal with stuff like that. But look, overall, very happy with the performance so far. It's going to be really interesting to see just how much performance we can squeeze out of this thing with some undervolting, overclocking, and thermal management. And yeah, look, in terms of the hardware, very happy with the design, and it's really leagues ahead in terms of the build quality over any other system that I've used in the last 5 years, which is pretty darn impressive. So yeah, that is what you can expect from an Alienware M15 Revision 2 out of the box. We will be digging into a lot more detail over the coming weeks. I just want to spend some time using it, do some video editing, do some gaming, and really, get to experience it for all that it is before I give you my more detailed opinions on the product. But that is it for today's video. So if you want to pick one of these up, there is a link in the description below for you. But as always, guys, if you've enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up button. Make sure that you are subscribed and hit the notification bell as well so you don't miss the next video. And I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.